Relationships have inherent vulnerability built into them. The closer the relationship, the more vulnerable it becomes. And there are a number of reasons for that. We bring in that vulnerability, our fears and our doubts, our lack of trust in ourselves, and it really can create problems in a relationship. It can create expectations for ourselves and for others, and really even the relationship itself. Today, I want to share something with you that I have found myself kind of struggling with a little bit in the last year and a half or so, in a couple of different ways that is kind of surprising to me in a way, but I think really representative of just how impactful it can be. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining me. So, this is something that I have been experiencing after hiring my first VA. So I have had my business for 16 years. Started as a private practice in person, and then it transitioned into doing online work in 2014. And I've always worked alone. My husband helps with some of the computer stuff, but I've done everything else on my own. And I've thought about hiring somebody for quite a long time, but honestly kind of felt overwhelmed by the idea and just wasn't sure where to start, and what if it doesn't work out, and all those kinds of things. Does that sound familiar? Not necessarily about hiring a VA, but about a relationship, whether it's a new friend or a new partner. All the what ifs, right? Well, I had a lot of them, and it kept me from moving forward and hiring somebody. And I really wish I would have hired somebody years ago, but my uncertainty got in the way. Finally, about a year and a half or so ago, I decided it was time. I needed to hire somebody to help me just with my regular stuff that I was doing, and also to help me grow, because that's ultimately the idea of having a business. Well, going into it, I was doubtful. I had managed people before, but clinically, more so than any other way. So it wasn't even so much of that, but it was just, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to have her do. I didn't know how to have her support the work that I was doing. I am a little organized in some ways, disorganized in others. And I thought, just the idea of getting things organized enough for her to take some things over was a little overwhelming to me. So there were so many buts and what ifs that got in the way, which is my own stuff, right? And I think a lot of us can go through that, even if we're thinking about getting a different job. And so I hired somebody, and a couple of things that I knew that were really important to me in hiring somebody was communication. Communication was really important. Communicating about if they were going to be late or not work, communicating about questions that they had, if they didn't understand something, if they had an idea about something, whatever it was, communication I knew was really important. And attention to detail. The two things that I thought were probably at the very top of the list. Other things they can kind of learn. Those two things are people can learn them, but they're just kind of a natural way of being in the world. So I hired somebody, and she was great in a lot of ways, but unfortunately, the communication was sorely lacking. Didn't show up for work, and didn't call, didn't let me know what was going on. That happened over a period of time. She worked for me for just over a few months or so. I kept talking with her about it. It kept happening, and I questioned myself, like, am I not communicating this well? Am I expecting too much? That was something I kept coming back to. Am I expecting too much? Maybe I'm really not cut out for this. So I had all these doubts. And unfortunately, eventually the lack of communication, the lack of showing up for work became a problem that I thought, I just can't do this. So unfortunately, I had to let her go. She was great in a lot of ways, and that was really hard. Sound familiar with relationships, right? There were some things about the work that she was doing that were really great, and I liked her. She was enthusiastic. There was a lot of things that I liked about her and the work that she was doing, but these couple of things that were really, really important to me were not there. And yet I found myself making excuses. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I should focus more on what she's creating, doing, whatever. So a lot of doubt. And for so many of us, when we are in a relationship, it could be a family relationship, but it tends to happen in our adult lives a lot with friendships and partnerships, where we kind of make excuses, we rationalize, well, it's not that bad, it could be worse, maybe if I just give it a little bit more time, right? So I got to a point and I thought, okay, this just isn't gonna work, and because it was really stressing me out. And so I thought, okay, this isn't gonna work. Well, fast forward, I decided to do it again, but I waited for a while because I had so many doubts. Like, maybe I'm just really not cut out for this. Maybe it just really isn't the way that my business needs to be ran. All the reasons why, all the yeah buts. So back in September, I decided I needed to do this again because I need to grow my business. I want to grow my business. I want to reach more people. And I knew that I needed help with that. So I decided to do it again. There were some doubts. What if it doesn't work out? What if the same thing happens? All of that kind of stuff. And through the hiring process, I kind of narrowed it down and all of that. And I found somebody that I thought was really great. And I was excited. I felt like she did a great job in her trial period. So I was really excited to bring her on board. And like, just kind of equating this to relationships in general, right? Kind of really excited about it, feeling like, yes, this is the right one. And again, this could be friend or partner. And we're working together. Things are going well. I'm very impressed. I'm feeling good. I was able to go off in October, and I actually felt pretty comfortable, which was really surprising to me, having her do the things that she was doing. And I think she did a great job. So things were really going very well, and I was feeling pretty safe, kind of grounded in where we were going to be going. I felt confident in her. She was communicating well. She wasn't just not showing up or anything like that. And she was doing a good job. So things are going really well. And there came a point where I get notifications on my phone when she's working on stuff. We work together inside of Trello, and so I get notifications. And there was a morning that, because she works different hours, she's in a different place, that I didn't have any notifications from her. And it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, which is typically when she starts, and no notifications, which I didn't give that much thought to. An hour went by and there's still no notification. And I started thinking, oh, I wonder if everything's okay. Not panicking, not having a lot of negative thoughts or anything. But then another hour goes by and I'm like, okay, what's going on? There were no messages from her. It appeared that she wasn't working. And I found myself thinking, okay, here it is. This isn't going to work. What was I thinking? And it wasn't an intense feeling like I would have felt before, or like I have felt before in other types of situations that I thought weren't going to work out. But I really got in my head and was thinking like all of those kinds of thoughts. Okay, it's not going to work. I knew it couldn't last, like all of that kind of stuff. And of course, it had nothing to do with her. And by the way, I have spoken with her about this. So she knows that I'm doing this video. She knows that I completely am happy with the work that she's doing. But this is kind of the point of this video, that we get caught up in our own fears Because ultimately, it is a fear about it not working out, but it's much bigger than that. And that's part of what I wanted to share today. So it turned out that I ended up getting to work. I got on Trello, and she had been working on stuff. I had notifications to look at different kinds of things. So she had been working that whole time, but for some reason, Trello didn't notify me. And I don't know why, that's happened since then as well. But for those few hours, it went from, oh, okay, not that big of a deal, then to an hour later, start questioning things, and 2 hours later, starting to kick in, right? Like all the doubts coming to the surface. And then recognizing that, okay, she's been working. And there was another thing that happened kind of around that same time period, nothing big at all. Kind of a lack of attention to detail about something. And it was a mistake. Like ultimately that's what it was. And we all make mistakes. I really do not expect perfection. But when you're in that place, right? So thinking again about just regular relationships, when you're in that place of like cognitively being able to recognize, well, nobody's perfect. And of course, people aren't going to call you back right away, or people are going to make mistakes. Like you can know that on a cognitive, rational level, right? But once that fear or doubt kicks in, we're not really able to connect with the feeling of that certainty. That like, it's not a big deal. We're not able to connect with that because what we're connecting with on a physiological level is the fear and the doubt. And if you've got like abandonment issues, attachment issues, wow, it can get really big. And for me, just with the work stuff, abandonment, I think, is kind of a part of what the first person stirred up for me. Not that she did it specifically, but my thoughts about it, the lack of communication, kind of brought that up for me, that she's just going to just suddenly not show up at all. So when we have struggled with these things, no matter what the relationship is, it can present itself and create some of those issues. So with the mistake that was made, immediately, like on one hand, I recognize, okay, it's not that big of a deal. On another hand, it really felt like this can't happen, and what if it keeps happening, and like all of this stuff. And again, this is my stuff. This isn't about her. Like I said, she had been doing really well in so many different ways. I really felt like I could trust in that. Like you've heard me talk about leaning in. I was fully leaning in by that point in trusting her and the work that she does. But a couple things kind of close together, and that vulnerability is heightened. And I recognized it. I recognized my mind going. I recognized feeling this just not very good energy, this like agitation. And I was talking to my husband about it, and I quickly recognized as I was talking with him that this is about, and I think I actually had noticed this previously, but wasn't connecting it necessarily at this particular time. But I said, I really need to be more mindful of just taking a deep breath and reconnecting with what I have experienced with her, what I have trusted in with her, and let that be the thing that I hold on to, instead of all of this angst that can so quickly and easily come up. Because she has given me evidence, right? So thinking again about relationships, she has given me lots of evidence to know that she does a good job in ways that I didn't even expect her to. She goes kind of she expands beyond what I necessarily tell her, because she has ideas and that kind of thing. So she's really doing a great job. So in recognizing that, I'm kind of able to lean into that proof, right? That she has done these things, that she's been doing a great job. And I recognized that I have this expectation not just because of that first experience I had, though that was proof of a bigger thing. And for me, and I have talked about this publicly before, I'm not sure if I've shared it on YouTube or not, but while through my healing, I don't necessarily struggle with personal worthiness or being deserving of like good things. I don't struggle a whole lot with self-doubt. Like those things are not really a part of my present life in my personal experiences. However, the one area where I tend to be more vulnerable is in my business. And honestly, I think part of that is because I have no business background. I have no interest in business. There's a lot that you have to think about that my mind just does not necessarily go there. I'm obviously, as a therapist, as a social worker, as a people person, as a communicator, my mind, my energy is quite different than very analytical, linear planning, all of that stuff. And so because of my lack of business experience, just even starting my own business, and because in part of that, because like every therapist on the planet, I have struggled with imposter syndrome and even doubting, like, am I really benefiting anybody? Is what I'm doing, does it matter? Like that's something I think a lot of us struggle with no matter what our work is. So it's not a huge struggle, but every once in a while, for a number of different reasons, it can creep in there again. And so for me, part of that expectation that has been created of all the yeah, buts and what ifs, right? Because that's coming from expectation that it's not going to work out. For me, it's not going to work out because it's not really a business. It's not a valuable business. I'm just me. I'm not a business owner. My business, Courageous Journeys, isn't worthy of having support. And I noticed that thought quite a long time before that. But those expectations are kind of always under the surface. We can work to heal them and let go of them, but to be honest with you, I haven't done a whole lot of work on that specifically. But this experience is making me do that. But that belief that I have carried around, that fear ultimately that I have carried around, that my business is not worthy, that Courageous Journeys is not worthy, and I am Courageous Journeys. So therefore, I, as a business owner, as a leader, am not worthy of having good, valuable support. And because of that, and this first experience, which was my evidence, right? I've talked about that all the time, that we look for evidence, we look for proof. So that was my proof that Courageous Journeys really isn't worth having good support. So then when Trello, actually it wasn't she, when Trello didn't notify me, when she made this one mistake, it was like, okay, here's all the evidence I need. What was I thinking, right? But I know, so I'm in a place where I can recognize that, and it didn't impact her. She wasn't even aware of this until I talked to her about doing this video. Fortunately, because I was able to really quickly move through that and not have it affect my interaction with her or even my expectation of the work that she was doing or what she would be doing going forward. So, and that is kind of what healing can look like in general. It's a process. And for me, in this process of believing in the work that I do and the business that I have, it is incrementally accepting and trusting that it is a worthy endeavor. And I know that just from the work that I do with clients, but in terms of it being a business and having support in doing it, that's been a little bit more challenging. So I would love for you to share. What are some of the expectations maybe that you hold on to when it comes to relationships? And it could be like a working relationship, whether it's with coworkers or an employer, or maybe you have your own business and expectations that you have with employees. Certainly a partner. Like one of the things that comes up for people all the time is if they've had a partner that cheated, or they had a partner that just wasn't very attuned to them and didn't really seem to put much effort into it, or hurt them in some way. Even without consciously thinking about it, we can have that expectation going into it down the road. In fact, for all of us, we bring, especially if there are unhealthy aspects to our relationships with our family of origin, our family system that we were raised in, we bring those expectations into our other relationships as we go forward in our lives. But they really interfere with our ability to just be present in that relationship, to feel a sense of openness in this particular person or this particular situation, because we're bringing all that other maybe hurt, woundedness, pain, fear into new relationships. So share your thoughts, comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful or interesting, make sure to click the like button so other people can find it too. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. Thanks so much for joining me.